In this video, we're going to talk about the Rhodesian Special Air Service, better known as Rhodesian SAS, a special forces unit formed during the Malayan Emergency. Background: the Malayan Emergency was a guerrilla war fought between fighters of the Malayan National Liberation Army (MNLA) and the British and Commonwealth military forces. The Communists fought to win independence for Malaya from the British Empire and to establish a socialist economy, while the Commonwealth forces fought to combat communism and protect British economic and colonial interests. Prequel to the Rhodesian SAS. The UK Special Air Service needs no introduction to anyone remotely interested in military history or special operations. However, there's much more to learn about this elite unit, which traces its existence and influence across the history of the British Empire. Much of the Brits' power was derived from their colonies and their stock of available military recruits. Even today, Australia and New Zealand kept the SAS title for their special forces. In 1948, guerrillas began attacking British infrastructure and challenging British rule. These were a reconstituted arm of the local units that the British had trained to fight Japanese occupiers during World War II. The terrain and tactics of the guerrillas were difficult to counter with conventional forces. Sabotage and hit-and-run operations began against the transportation systems and the lucrative rubber plantations that were vital to Britain. The guerrillas would come from the impenetrable jungle and disappear back into it. During the ongoing actions in Malaya, a group of men from the south of Rhodesia volunteered to go to Malaya. Rhodesia had contributed greatly in proportion to its population in World War II, and a few Rhodesians had served in the SAS. Rhodesian young men who had felt that they'd missed their chance to fight for the crown applied. Out of all the applicants, 1,000 were led through to the proving grounds. These 1,000 applicants were carefully screened, and 100 men were chosen to be part of the Malayan Scouts and the resurrected SAS. They'd been chosen for their background and ability to work with a team in a harsh environment. Many of the men had grown up hunting and tracking. Tracking in Africa was an essential skill that could not be learned overnight, but they found themselves learning to operate in the jungle instead of an open area. Once they were chosen, they were trained by two Rhodesian veterans of World War II, Lieutenant Peter Walls and Lieutenant Ron Campbell Morrison. Both were combat experienced and were expected to be replaced by a British commander. The 100 were sent off to war. While there, they became the C Squadron known as the Malayan Scouts of the already formed A and B Squadron of the British SAS. Their primary missions were reconnaissance and the interdiction of the enemy guerrilla forces along well-known Allied supply routes. When C Squadron concluded their tour of duty, they came back to southern Rhodesia and the unit was disbanded. Harsh truth about guerrilla warfare. Even though the young men were chosen and trained for Rhodesia, it was very hard to adapt. The canopy of the jungle blocked sunlight, causing the men to look for different tracks than they were accustomed to. The floor of the jungle was full of rotting vegetation, and the bush was often so thick that machetes had to be used to move forward. The vegetation was as much their adversary as the enemy guerrillas were. It was in the jungle that the lessons of guerrilla warfare were born for the Rhodesians. This war will not allow for the entire squadron to hack through the jungle in open pursuit of the enemy. To do so would invite ambush and death. Operating in small groups from a 4 to 14-man patrol was the norm. Soldiers could operate for a maximum of 7 days in the jungle. The enemies were not large in number, but their knowledge of the jungle terrain allowed them to overcome a pursuing army. C Squadron's job was to find them, take their safe havens away, and then drive them out of the bush into the hands of more conventional army units. This took patience and resolve. The SAS would often spend weeks at a time tracking and piecing together the intelligence they developed. One thing that eased the pursuit was the helicopters, which allowed the men to be inserted deep into enemy territory to hunt their prey. Typically, a team would insert into an area believed to be the home to a band of guerrillas and plot out the areas to recon, searching behind every bush for information that would lead them to their objective. A base camp would be set up, and from there men would be sent in 4 distinct directions to create a 360-degree search area. This would go on for days or weeks, until they found a trail or a camp. Once the enemy was located, they would devise an ambush plan. It was rare to make an outright assault due to the small number of operators. Forming and disbanding of the RSAS. The formation of the real Rhodesian SAS dates back to November 1959. The Federal Assembly decided to form a parachute evaluation detachment with a view to the possible formation of an airborne unit. In 1960, a detachment of the Royal Air Force arrived to conduct the training of the Parachute Evaluation Detachment. The British had learned many valuable lessons in jungle warfare while fighting the Japanese in Southeast Asia. This training and experience still lived on in the seasoned veterans. By March of the same year, the PED was complete, and those who endured the course would go on to become members of the PED. The formation was a success, and in July the Brits decided to form a regular European Special Air Services squadron. In late 1960, a training unit was formed to prepare the ones willing to join the 1st Rhodesian Light Infantry and Sea Squadron SAS. In early 1961, 6 volunteers from the Air Force were sent to England for parachute instructor training, plus a small group of volunteer officers to complete a selection course with the SAS in Britain. When they came back in August 1961, they created the first of many selection courses, which were run in the Matopos just outside Bulawayo. The first squad completed their training in November and were presented with their wings. In late 1961, the SAS were moved to Ndola Barracks in northern Rhodesia, along with the Silu Scouts Armoured Car Regiment. By July of the following year, more squadrons completed the course, so the unit had sufficient men to become operational and became known as Sea Squadron Rhodesian Special Air Service. With the breakup of the Federation at the end of 1963, the squadron was virtually destroyed, with some remaining in northern Rhodesia. Only 38 men remained to serve in southern Rhodesia. In the years following the breakup, the unit was having difficulty attracting recruits. This was primarily due to the high standards required of an SAS soldier, and also due to the bad blood between the SAS and the RLI, from where most of the recruits should have been selected. Nevertheless, the SAS and the RLI played crucial roles in the domestic counter-effort during the Rhodesian Bush War. The SAS and the Scouts were the principal special forces units used in external operations, with the most important one being Operation Dingo in November 1977, which was one of the most successful operations conducted during the war, where more than 3,000 Zanla fighters were killed and 5,000 wounded. The number of men in the SAS went up to approximately 250 in June 1978, when the Sea Squadron Rhodesian Special Air Service became Rhodesian Special Air Service Regiment. The unit moved to its new barracks called Cabrit in 1979 and continued to serve with outstanding success until it was disbanded with the transition to black majority rule on the 31st of December 1980 as Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. Peter Walls. Among the brave men that were part of this Special Forces unit, a few stood out. These were real school tough guy veterans that instead of retirement, trained, guided and mentored newly formed forces. One of them was Lieutenant General George Peter Walls, who was born in Rhodesia. His father was a military pilot, and he'd followed in his tracks. At the age of 24, Walls was promoted to the rank of captain and was appointed second in command of Sea Squadron. Walls proved his fighting and leadership qualities in the Malayan jungle, for which he was promoted to the rank of major and appointed as the unit's commanding officer. For his military service in Rhodesia, he was awarded the Legion of Merit, the Defence Cross for Distinguished Service, and the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. For those interested in learning more about the Bush War, Rhodesian SAS, and the guerrilla tactics training and execution, we recommend books written by historian Hannes Wessels, A Handful of Hard Men, the SAS and the battle for Rhodesia. And we dared to win the SAS in Rhodesia. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, ring that bell so you don't miss any of our future uploads. Until the next time.